I wanted to be a dancer. And I wanted to go home and I wanted to get married and I wanted to be normal and I wanted that white picket fence and I wanted to open a dancing school. These are things I really wanted to do. You think just because I'm a movie star I don't have feelings? Well, you're wrong. I do have feelings. I'm an actress. I have all of them.
There is a glow to Goldie Hawn that Hollywood could never dim. An innocence warmed by laughter, a spirit shaped by survival. But behind that sunshine, behind decades of iconic roles and unforgettable smiles, lies a truth fewer people know. Goldie's journey was not merely built on talent or luck. It was built on battles, quiet, private, and often heartbreaking. Some people entered her life with love, others brought disappointment. A few left scars, and one left a memory so dark she buried it for decades. From failed marriages to stolen career opportunities, from public humiliation to the night, at just 19, when a powerful man cornered her in a room she never should have entered. These 6 encounters shaped her forever. Stay with this story until the end. The final chapter is the moment that changed Goldie Hawn's life in ways she never fully spoke of again. Number 1. Bill Hudson. For Goldie Hawn, the 1970s were a whirlwind of fame, music, travel, and unexpected tenderness. When she first met Bill Hudson, he was not yet the storm that would rewrite her family's future. He was charming, attentive, and hungry for something bigger than himself. Goldie later said in interviews that she was drawn to his confidence, his musicality, and the way he looked at her as though she were more than just America's golden girl. In her memoir, A Lotus Grows in the Mud, she described that time as fast, exhilarating, and filled with youthful optimism. But optimism, she wrote, can be a dangerous illusion. Their marriage began beautifully. They laughed, they dreamed, they built a life that felt almost cinematic. But the years that followed were filled with tension. Bill's ambition clashing with Goldie's rising stardom, his insecurities reflecting in every argument. In her book, she recalled moments when she felt unseen, unheard, as if the man who once protected her had become suspicious of her success. Hollywood was harsh, but home had grown harsher. Then came the divorce, public, bitter, painful. Bill later criticized Goldie in interviews, spoke harshly about Kate and Oliver, and gave the world a version of their family that cut deep. Goldie, meanwhile, chose silence. In multiple interviews, she emphasized love, forgiveness, and growth. Yet the sadness in her eyes when Bill's name surfaced told its own story. What truly wounded her was not the end of the marriage, but the collapse of a family she tried so hard to protect. Goldie once said that motherhood was my soul, and Bill's public attacks on their children became the part she never forgave. His betrayal didn't shatter her career, but it shattered her trust. Number 2. Gus Triconis. Long before Goldie Hawn became one of America's most bankable movie stars, she was a young dancer searching for purpose. Gus Triconis entered her life during that early chapter, calm, confident, and carrying the quiet intensity of a man who preferred the shadows to the spotlight. He was a respected dancer and choreographer with credits alongside Elvis Presley and Anne Margaret. When Goldie married him in 1969, she believed she was choosing stability, peace, and a partner who understood the rhythm of her artistic world. But success has a way of widening the cracks that were already forming. In her memoir, Goldie reflected that the marriage began to change as her fame exploded. She wrote that Gus was a good man, yet hinted that their lives no longer ran on parallel tracks. While she was traveling the world, winning an Oscar, and becoming a household name, Gus was struggling to find steady work. The imbalance grew unbearable. In later interviews, Goldie described a loneliness that crept into the marriage. She would return home from film sets filled with new experiences, new people, new dreams, only to find silence, distance, and resentment waiting behind the door. She spoke gently, always avoiding cruelty, but she admitted that their union had become emotionally starved. Hollywood did not destroy them. Time did. And unspoken expectations turned into disappointment. By 1973, Goldie asked for a separation, a moment she later described as heartbreaking but necessary. She supported Gus financially for years afterward, proof that their ending was not born of anger, but of incompatibility. Yet the grief of that young marriage never left her completely. It taught her that love could fade without villainy, and that a broken heart sometimes comes without a single cruel word. It was her first true lesson in letting go, and it stayed with her forever. Number 3. Harvey Weinstein. Among all the storms Goldie Hawn faced in Hollywood, this was the one she never expected, and the one that marked her the deepest professionally. In the late 1980s, Goldie was set to produce and star in a film adaptation of the beloved Broadway musical Chicago. She was passionate about it, prepared for it, and already shaping its vision. Harvey Weinstein, then a rising but notoriously aggressive producer, secured the rights through Miramax. What followed became one of the most painful and well-documented betrayals of Goldie's career. Goldie later recounted the story in interviews with outlets like Variety. She explained that she and Weinstein had agreed she would play Velma Kelly, and she invested months into development. But slowly, quietly, Weinstein began pushing her out. He hired new writers, changed the direction, and eventually replaced her entirely, years before the Renee Zellweger-Catherine Zeta-Jones version was even conceived. Goldie described the moment she discovered the betrayal. "He lied," she said simply. "I was devastated." This was not just a casting change. It was a breach of trust, a violation of a partnership, and a display of power that left Goldie feeling manipulated and discarded. Weinstein reportedly owed her money from the abandoned project, and after years of legal back and forth, she finally confronted him directly. When she recounted that confrontation decades later, her voice carried both strength and pain. "I stood up to him, and he paid." Goldie had always been known for grace and humor, but this incident pulled back the curtain on how brazen Hollywood's power structures could be. It left her wiser, more cautious, and more protective of her creative vision. The wound was not personal, it was professional, yet it shaped her distrust of the industry in ways she rarely discussed publicly. This chapter of her life was not about hatred. It was about betrayal, resilience, and reclaiming her voice in a system built to silence women. Number 4. Courtney Love. Goldie Hawn had survived divorces, heartbreak, and Hollywood backrooms, but nothing prepared her for the sting of an unexpected insult delivered on one of the industry's biggest nights. It was 2001, the Golden Globe Awards, a night meant to celebrate artistry, legacy, and the enduring glamour of old Hollywood. Goldie, always radiant and warm, stepped on stage to present an award. Backstage, cameras caught Courtney Love making a brash, cutting remark about her appearance. The moment went viral long before social media existed. Goldie, who built her entire career on kindness, positivity, and light, was deeply hurt. She never lashed out publicly, but in private conversations and later interviews, she admitted that Love's comment stung more than I expected. To Goldie, it wasn't simply a joke gone wrong, it was a public attempt to humiliate her, a disrespect she neither provoked nor deserved. In her memoir and interviews with outlets like Harper's Bazaar, Goldie has spoken about aging in Hollywood and the pressure women face to remain eternally youthful. Courtney's remark struck at that very vulnerability. It wasn't about vanity, it was about dignity. Goldie had worked for decades to transcend Hollywood's cruel standards. To be mocked by another woman, especially in such a public space, felt like a betrayal of solidarity. Goldie chose silence, not retaliation. Her philosophy had always been to protect your inner light, a phrase she often used when discussing personal growth. But friends close to her later revealed that she never fully forgot that night. It was not the insult itself, but what it represented, how easily human beings can tear down one another for amusement, and how fame does not shield one's heart from cruelty. Courtney Love may have moved on quickly. Goldie did too, but a faint bruise remained, tucked away with the others she carried quietly over the years. Number 5. Bruno Winsell. Before Goldie Hawn became a global symbol of joy, she was a young woman swept into a whirlwind romance with the Swedish singer and actor Bruno Winsell. He was magnetic, tall, handsome, and carrying the kind of European charm that felt exotic to a girl who had grown up dancing in Washington, D.C. They met in the late 1960s, a time when Goldie was still discovering who she was, long before fame hardened her instincts and taught her caution. Bruno, with his flamboyant energy and dramatic intensity, brought passion into her life, perhaps too much of it. In her memoir, Goldie described their relationship as beautiful, chaotic, consuming. She recalled nights of music and laughter, long conversations about art, and the sweetness of young love. But she also wrote of the volatility, the jealousy, the unpredictable mood swings, and the emotional push and pull that left her exhausted. Bruno lived like a flame, and loving him meant standing close enough to feel both warmth and danger. Their romance stretched across borders. Goldie followed him to Europe, hoping to preserve the magic they created together, but distance only magnified their differences. Bruno's career struggles began to weigh heavily on him, and Goldie's rising fame in America created a gap neither of them could close. She wrote that she felt torn between supporting the man she cared for and protecting the future she was building. "I was too young to save someone who didn't want to save himself," she later reflected. The end came quietly, without public headlines or dramatic confrontations. It was simply two young dreamers growing apart, but the emotional residue stayed with Goldie. Their time together taught her about boundaries, about the dangers of loving someone more than yourself, and about the heartbreak of letting go of a man who dazzled the world, but couldn't find peace within his own. Bruno Winsell wasn't a villain, he was a lesson. Number 6. A.L. Capp. There are moments in a woman's life that never leave her, not because they were beautiful, but because they were terrifying. For Goldie Hawn, one of those moments involved the legendary cartoonist Al Capp, a man who wielded enormous cultural power in the 1960s. Goldie was only a young dancer then, barely beginning to understand the complexities of show business. Capp, on the other hand, was already famous, influential, and feared for his temper and predatory behavior. Their encounter became one of the darkest memories she ever revealed publicly. In her memoir, A Lotus Grows in the Mud, Goldie recounted the incident with chilling clarity. She had been invited to meet Capp under the assumption it was a professional opportunity, an audition, a discussion, a possible television role. Instead, she walked into a room where Capp attempted to coerce her into something she never consented to. Goldie escaped, shaken and trembling, and never forgot the feeling of betrayal by someone who was supposed to be a mentor. For decades, she rarely spoke of the experience, but when she finally did, her voice carried the weight of thousands of women who endured the same abuse of power in silence. Goldie said she learned the real Hollywood that day, a place where innocence could be exploited, and where young women were expected to endure indignities to succeed. She refused. She chose dignity over fear, her future over an opportunity offered by the wrong man. That encounter fundamentally shaped her understanding of boundaries. It taught her to trust her instincts, to guard her safety, and to stand unapologetically against anyone who tried to diminish her. Goldie later used her platform to empower young women, advocating resilience, self-worth, and the importance of saying no. Al Capp represented a darkness she escaped from, but one she never forgot. Looking back at Goldie Hawn's life is like watching a reel of Hollywood itself, glittering on the surface, complicated underneath. These 6 relationships, each so different in tone and consequence, shaped the woman we know today. Some taught her strength, some taught her boundaries, others taught her how deeply a heart can break and still find its way back to joy. Through betrayal, humiliation, abandonment, and danger, Goldie carried her light forward, refusing to let the cruelty of others extinguish the spirit that made her a legend. At 81, she speaks not with bitterness, but with clarity. These chapters of her past are not wounds she clings to. They are lessons she honors. And in the end, they helped her become a woman defined not by what hurt her, but by what she overcame. Which of these stories surprised you most? Share your thoughts below and let the conversation continue.